and Middle East and Africa. My name is Dusan Nitschneider. I am the current president or regional president of GALA's EMEA section, and I will be the moderator of today's webinar. For those who haven't been to our previous webinars, GALA is the Global Advertising Lawyers Alliance. It's an organization connecting advertising or law firms which main practices marketing and advertising law from all over the world. We are just now today the EMEA section, which is Europe, Middle East and Africa. You can find out more about GALA on the webpage galalaw.com, and not only the EMEA section, but all the sections, all the firms for all around the world. First, let me introduce today's speakers. We will have Hande Hancer from Dusan Partners, Turkey. Together with her, Ricardo Henriques from Abreu, Advogados, Portugal will speak. He will be accompanied with Dina Kravchenko from Russian firm ALRUD, and followed by Jacek Myszko from Soltyszyński, Kravchenko, Ślezak from Poland. Last but not least, we will also have Pienaar from Adams & Adams, South Africa. Before we move to the topic, let me also mention that we have this webinar is planned for about 1 hour. You can post your questions in the Q&A section, which you can find on your right-hand side of your screen. I will be managing the questions and either ask our speakers to answer them as they will talk, or we'll just summarize them at the end or before the end of our session. Just one last thing to mention is that this webinar is recorded. So when you miss a couple of last minutes or you are already late, you will have a chance to hear it once again. We will send the link with recording afterwards or after this webinar. So welcome again, and let's move to the topic itself. First, interesting question that comes to our mind when we talk about food and advertising, food and beverage advertising is what type of regulations do we have in the world, or basically in EMEA region? Do we have a, let's say, self-regulation type of advertising, or is there a strong regulation, let's say, given by the state authorities? Jenny.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Dusan. Indeed, South Africa is one of those countries where we have a combination of both statute and self-regulation. We have a number of very important acts of parliament that deal with the regulation of and the promotion of foodstuffs and beverages, both alcoholic and otherwise. The main foodstuffs law is actually the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectants Act. And as you can see, it's quite an old act. And believe it or not, it covers beer also. So beer is regarded as a foodstuff in South Africa, but that's been flagged for change, but we'll discuss that a little bit later on. The second piece of legislation that we have is on the next slide, is the Agricultural Product Standards Act. Oh, sorry, hang on, let me go back one. Sorry, I forgot about this. In addition to the, you can move on to the next one. Sorry, Dusan, I'm confusing you and myself. There we go. So under the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectants Act, we also have a set of regulations. And why we have regulations is to try and interpret what the Act puts forward. So most of those regulations deal specifically with how products must be labeled and how they must be advertised. It includes regulations relating to what kind of claims can be made in relation to foodstuff. It relates to nutrition information tables, the fact that for certain types of products, you have to indicate where the product is manufactured, and then also deals with very important issues relating to certain health claims made in relation to products. That type of information is standard across the board for foodstuffs in South Africa. So if we look at the next slide, which is the one that deals with the Agricultural Product Standards Act, that also deals with foodstuffs, but it has very specific regulations that deal with certain types of foodstuffs only. So strict regulations relating to bread, maize meal, and then different types of flour products in South Africa. Under the Agricultural Product Standards Act, there are a whole host of regulations that deal inter alia with meat products and dairy products, but there also are very important regulations relating to fruit juice, to tell you what type of fruit juice can be called fruit juice, whether something is a fruit drink, and it all depends on the volume of the fruit concentrate that's in the product as to what you can call it. That is important for another reason, because in 2018, our government introduced a tax levy on sugared beverages. At the moment, it only applies to carbonated soft drinks, but there is some discussion from certain quarters, particularly health concerned authorities, who want to try and move that over to fruit juices that also contain high sugar contents. At the moment, the tax is an 11% tax on a price per litre of the product sold. And it's had quite a significant impact on the consumption of sugary beverages in South Africa. If we can go to the next slide, we have two very important acts of Parliament that deal with liquor products. The first is the Liquor Act, and that deals only with beer, which it defines as including an ale, a cider, a stout, but not a traditional African beer. We also have the Liquor Products Act, which deals with all other liquor products like wine, alcoholic fruit beverages, spirits, but not beers. So what has actually happened is we've had a little bit of a gap in our law for a number of years now. And later on, I'll talk about the amendments that are coming into play once the regulations are drafted. So at the moment, the liquor product regulations will prescribe compulsory labeling requirements for liquor products, what you can call a spirit, what you can call an alcoholic fruit beverage. So it's very, very clearly defined. And those products, there's strict compliance that is required for those products. Right, then where can we go on to? Yeah, I think that's it. I think we're done. I'm trying to remember what was the next slide after this. Sorry, Dusan. There we go. It's the self-regulation slide. So in South Africa, we also have a system of self-regulation. We have an advertising regulatory board, which has a code of advertising practice that advertisers should adhere to. There's been a bit of an issue with the ARB, as we call it, because there's been a challenge to its jurisdiction. And in fact, our courts have found that if you're not a member of the ARB, then you're not bound by the code. Alcoholic beverages, the promotion and commercial communication relating to alcoholic beverages is also governed by an organization called aware.org.za, which is an association which works for responsible advertising of alcoholic products in South Africa. They have their own code of commercial communication, which must be adhered to at all times. So that's on the self-regulation front. And I think that's all from me for now, Dusan.
Okay, it seems to be quite a lot of statutory regulation in South Africa. What about Turkey, Hande? How's the situation there?
Yes, actually in Turkey, food and beverage sector is also highly regulated. There are an enormous number of regulations ruling the ingredient, labeling, nutritional information, nutritional claims, and such. We mainly refer them as food codex, and these legal texts are mostly harmonized with EU regulations. Turkish Ministry of Agriculture is the main authority supervising the food and beverages sector. Given the highly regulated nature of this sector, advertisements related to food and beverages must also comply with these legal requirements. For instance, if the food codex doesn't allow to put preservatives or additives to a certain product, then it is not allowed to advertise that particular food product that it doesn't contain preservatives or additives, as this is considered to be a false superiority claim. On the other hand, the advertisements related to food products high in fat, sugar, and salt, and the use of health-related claims in connection with food products are strictly regulated, which I would like to talk a little bit more later. Thank you very much.
Understood. Thank you, Hande. And I'm now switching to Russia just to get a taste how the food and beverage advertising is in Russia. Dina, go ahead.
Yes, it is a little bit simpler for Russia, I believe, because the issues of advertising and labeling are somewhat divided. The labeling and the claims on the product packaging are regulated on the supranational level by the legislation of the Eurasian Economic Union. There are several technical regulations devoted to different type of food products, and you may find all specific requirements to the labeling there. And all the advertisement is regulated by the law on advertising, which established the legal framework for all advertisement in Russia. There are no special regime for food products themselves, but there are some special rules for the advertising of beverages and food supplement. The Russian regulator is the Federal Anti-Monopoly Service, and it both issues decisions upon the result of the inspection of special certain advertisement and the general recommendations or clarification of the certain norms. These clarifications does not have mandatory power, but nevertheless, they are usually observed by the market players. Since there are no special rule for the food products, the liability generally comes for the breach of general requirements to the advertising, such as that the advertisement should be fair and reliable. And this slide shows one of the examples. There are two products of the same nature. This is the Russian meat dumplings produced by different companies. The one on the left is so-called the original one, the one that was longer on the market, and its name is a play on the word brov, in which bouillon, which is brov in Russian. And the other one is its competitor, and the competitor used the slogan "Eat meat" instead of brov. And the Russian regulator found that this second company uses the position of the other company. It intends to gain competitive advantage, and it damaged the business reputation of the other company. No, not that many acts for Russia. And I believe this is all for me on this point.
Okay, so not so much, let's say, regulation, but a little bit more of the self-regulation. So let's move on to how the situation is in Poland. Jacek, you are free to go.
Thank you. So in Poland, we have a little bit of everything. It's a mix of statutory law, soft law, and self-regulation. In terms of statutory law, it's a mix of local law and EU regulations. So both systems supplement each other. And the result is that we have pretty strict regulation for advertising of foodstuffs. It can be general rules, which basically stem from the main regulation 1169. And then they can be specified when it comes to certain types of food. For example, formulas for infants, foodstuffs for special purpose, mineral waters, alcoholic beverages. There is also a specific regulation based on EU law related to the use of specific claims. For example, health claims or eco-bio claims, which actually the new regulation will kick in at the beginning of next year. When it comes to soft law, we deal with all sorts of guidelines and by the authorities and the advisory boards by the authorities dealing with the food market. So, for example, we have the whole set of local guidelines for, the main regulation, 1169, that regulates food presentation and advertising on the European market. When it comes to self-regulation, again, we have industry codes which cover the whole market of foodstuffs. For example, the code of TV broadcasters, which aims to regulate advertising of foodstuffs for addressed to minors up to 12 years old. And we have sector-specific codes, for example, codes for food supplements, beer, and other alcoholic beverages. So when you try to clear your product on the market, you need to take into account all the layers and only then decide if everything is okay or not. Dusan, if we can go to another slide, the enforcement action in Poland of the said provisions is very often taken by the competitors. As weird as it may sound, the competitors are very often trigger of the actions by the authorities. And if this part does not work well for them, they go to court and they enforce certain provisions of labeling regarding labeling and advertising. This seems to be very often the case in Poland. Obviously, also all sort of bans and fines imposed by the authorities, as well as soft letters, as we call them, issued by the authorities. Again, the best example would be the food supplements market, which is very hot topic in Poland for the past years. There are also sector-specific actions, for example, criminal charges in the spirit drinks and wine sector. However, in theory, they are possible. In practice, the enforcement is very poor here. Dusan, and maybe the next one. So I gave you some examples here. What are the infringing ads in Poland based on the said provisions? The first one, unfortunately, you will need to copy the link and then just play it for yourself. It's an ad for Grześki chocolate bars. There is this beautiful scene. Kids are playing. Mother is just eating a chocolate bar. Then father comes to the picture. Kids are screaming, "Daddy, daddy, let's play." And then the mother suddenly says, he's not your father. And then Grześki, no bullshitting. So huge outrage on the market, a lot of complaints, and it was definitely recognized as something contrary to all the proper market standards. The next one, Dusan, if you could, please, thank you. It speaks for itself. It's an energy drink, and definitely it went too far. The next one, Dusan, please. This one is for the meat producer, and there is on the bottom right corner, there is zero carbon footprint sign. Someone checked it, and there is no such thing like zero carbon footprint certificate, because this was what specifically the producer referred to. There is low carbon emission certificate, and therefore it was considered misleading. So this is a information pill for you to take away in terms of our regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacek. This, your regulation reminds me the one in our country. We are neighbors, of course. And finally, let's discuss, or let's hear how the situation with the type of regulation in the food and beverage advertising is in Portugal. Ricardo, please.
Thank you, Dusan. Well, in Portugal, very similar to Poland, we have a mix of statutory law and self-regulation. We actually have an advertising code and also a self-regulatory code that usually cover all of these topics. We have also some specific statutes on labeling, nutritional information, alcoholic beverages, food supplements, and more recently, a new law was approved on high-value, high-fat, sugar, and salt foods, and that specifically covers that sector. But perhaps surprisingly, what companies have had more difficult coping with are the general principles of advertising, and those are the ones that have ended up on our self-regulatory board for assessment, and that raised concerns, and which I bring you here for your curiosity. The case that we see here on this slide regards a case where milk production company used minors below the age of 1 in their advertising, and this triggered the case where they found the use of these minors to be incompatible with our advertising code, namely on a provision that prohibits the use of minors in advertising of products that that are not destined or specifically addressed to them, when minors are the main character of the advertisement. And this was the case because cow milk is not supposed to be given to children under the age of 1. So this was something that was found infringing of our advertising code, and so it was removed from the air. Dusan, please, could you move to the other one? This one actually is for a beer company, as you can see in the image, which is called Superbock, and they used a play on the words with back to basics, using the expression "bock to basics." And this was basically for them a call for the use of an old format of bottle that they used to have in the market, and they wanted to bring it back. And so they tried to use this expression. Curiously enough, in the first instance, a legal board on the self-regulatory jury found this to be infringing of a specific statute of Portuguese advertising code that says that the use of foreign language is prohibited unless it is either specifically addressed to a foreign audience, which was not the case, or unless it's necessary, absolutely necessary, to obtain a specific intended effect with the message, which could be the case here, but they found that this was not admissible. And then on appeal, the appeal body of the jury found that they were actually right, because in this case that exception should apply, which is something I agree with, of course, because in this case the Bock to Basics did not address any specific characteristic of the product, so it didn't mean that the consumers would be missing any specific information or essential characteristic of the good that they were buying with this message. So it was absolutely necessary to obtain the intended effect with a play of words, Bock to Basics.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, everyone. Or is it everything from? Yes, it is. So thank you for the intro, everyone. When talking about food and beverage advertising, it's always a complicated topic when we are advertising not the organic or bio food, but when the producers are advertising unhealthy food under the abbreviation of HFSS, like high fat, sugar, and salt. So let's talk in the next few minutes about the regulation of the advertising of high fat and sugar and salt products. So how Hande, it seems that Turkey has quite a lot to talk about.
Yes, thank you very much, Dusan. Well, as I mentioned, the food products high in fat, sugar, and salt are under strict radar in Turkey. The advertising and marketing activities of these products are restricted, mostly for the protection of children from excessive consumption. The sales of these products at school canteens have long been prohibited, and there are two important regulations restricting the advertising and marketing activities of these products, which I would like to mention. The first one is the restriction of TV ads for these products. This restriction is based on a categorization published by the Ministry of Health back in 2018. The list is called the Nutrition Profile Guide, and this contains 3 product categorizations, as you can see: red, orange, and green category. Red category contains the food and beverages which are high in fat, sugar, and salt, such as potato chips, chocolates, and fizzy drinks. This category is also called the category of products of which the excessive consumption is not recommended. The TV ads for this category is prohibited during, before, or after the TV shows which address children. Other than that, the TV ads are allowed, but they must be accompanied by health warnings, which are also provided by the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health has prepared a list of health warnings, and you should just pick one of them to show TV ads for these products other than children TV shows. The orange category contains the products such as nuts, crackers, breakfast cereals, dairy products, This category is in between the two others. And if the products listed in this category fulfills the criteria as to the amount of fat, sugar, or salt set by the Ministry of Health, then there is no restriction. But if they don't meet the criteria, then they will fall under red category. And the green category obviously contains the products which are accepted to be healthy, so there is no restrictions. The other important regulation restricting the advertisement of this product is the restriction as to providing gifts together with these products. So basically, no gifts, which means any item which would appeal the interests of children shall be provided. But if the gift, for instance, the toy, is already included as a part of the product, then it is allowed. You can see that all these measures are for the protection of children from the excessive consumption of these products. Here you see the pictures of burger menus, which usually provide gifts together with kid menus. But the advertisement board already clarified that these gifts are not a breach of this rule, provided that the products contained in these menus do not fall under red category. So if it doesn't contain a fizzy drink or potato chips, then they would be okay. There is an interesting decision which I would like to share in the next slide. And I believe this shows how the rules as to the restriction of this providing gifts is applied. In this case, you see that this famous gummy candy brand launched a pencil case. This is a pencil case, the picture you see, which is obviously not a food product. But together with this pencil case, the company also provided some free gummy candy products, which do fall in red category. So although the ads or the marketing activity was not related to a food product, the advertising board still considered this as a breach of this rule, as the board considered that this will be appealing to children, and children would like to buy this product so that they can also have the free candy bears. I think this is all for me for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hande, and I will switch again to Dina. She has quite a lot of say about the HFSS regulations and restrictions in Russia.
Thank you, Dusan. I believe that it's not a lot, but just maybe some fun cases to mention. There has been some ongoing discussions in Russia about implementation of certain restrictions regarding the HFSS products here, and it was thought that they will be quite similar to what Hande has described, and or the restrictions that are implemented on the level of the European Union, but they have stayed at the level of the discussions, and COVID put a pause on all that. What we currently see on the market is that the HFSS and fast food advertising is usually targeting the younger audiences, and it's usually quite aggressive in their nature. And they can include suggestive wording, they can include some borderline aggressive phrases, and they can disparage the healthy food. For example, there was a case where the burger restaurant was found guilty because they have posted an advertisement with a steak, and the slogan was "We scare the vegans." And the Russian regulator said that this is very dismissive of the vegans as a group, because the advertising means that they can be scared with just a piece of meat, and you should stop this advertising campaign. One of the major players on the market of aggressive advertising of fast food is Burger King, and it is very famous for its very aggressive and very suggestive wordings and promos, and the Russian regulator had several times reviewed their campaigns and several times found them in breach of the advertising legislation. Just to give you an example, there was an ad with a slogan, with a picture of nuggets in the form of hand showing a middle finger, and the slogan was hello to everybody and to every place where nuggets are cost higher than the 69 rubles. And that was the breach, and they were punished for this because obviously this is a bit out of line. So this is it for Russia.
Okay, and the others, for example, Ricardo, do you have anything to comment on or to add, like specifics for your country?
Yes, thank you, Dusan. Well, yes, as I mentioned previously, there has been a new regulation on this type of high-fat, salt and sugar foods, and in Portugal, the scope is also to protect, especially minors. So it's banning of this type of ads promoting this type of foods in schools, public playgrounds, within the 100 meters radius of schools and playgrounds, on sporting, cultural, and recreational events, in television programs, in cinemas, publications aimed at minors, and also on the internet through websites and social networks specifically addressed at minors. So this is a very broad scope, and which companies have been struggling with to comply. But it doesn't stop at minors. It also addresses general advertising for this type of foodstuffs, and it says that it cannot encourage excessive consumption, it cannot neglect non-consumers, and it should convey, it should not convey an idea of easiness of purchase or minimizing its impacts on health. So it's quite broad and quite strict and difficult to comply with.
Okay, Ricardo, thank you. Like, how about Poland, Jacek?
Thank you, Dusan. In Poland, we have actually this interesting cooperation of multiple players on the market, because we have this special code that was signed by the broadcasters, and it was created in association with the food producers and the food authority in Poland. The code itself specifies certain types of food that cannot be advertised within or in proximity to the broadcasts addressed to children that are below 12 years old. The products that are named specifically are sugar and sugar-based products, specifically chocolate, jam, and non-chocolate sweets, soft drinks, and potato chips, and potato-based snacks. So there is unconditional ban for advertising of such products in proximity to children broadcasts. We have a general self-regulation system which operates at higher level than the previously set regulation, and it simply operates in general terms and provides general criteria for advertising regarding kids and special types of food. However, it is not that specific. All the sources of regulation, they supplement each other, and apparently they work really well. Each year we have this market review in terms of advertising addressed to children, and specifically in terms of unhealthy food. And allegedly this system works really well. The supervisory body claims that there are virtually no incidents on the Polish market in this scope. And apparently this seems to be one of the most efficient systems in Europe, self-regulation systems in Europe in this respect. So at least in this department, we can be proud of ourselves.
Well, thank you, Jacek. That's very interesting and very welcome. So I'm asking Jenny to get some final remarks about high in food, high in fat, sugar, and salt regulations.
There's been a lot of lobbying, Dusan, and there's some new there are regulations that are coming to the labeling and advertising regulations, but they've been before Parliament probably for about 5-6 years already, and they've been very hotly debated, and there've been certain amendments that have happened to the regulations over time to deal specifically with foods that are nutrient deficient, as they call them, or so-called unhealthy foods. At one stage, one of the amendments was even to try and create a list of unhealthy foods. And of course, that had a direct impact on some of our clients' trade, when you're seeing children's breakfast cereals and such products that are listed there. But I'll chat about that a little bit later on, but there's currently nothing that prevents the promotion and advertising if you as a consumer have a concern about a particular advert. So to use Dina's example of Burger King, if you were a vegan or a vegetarian, you could file a complaint with our advertising regulatory board on the grounds that the advert is offensive to vegetarians or to vegans, and then the complaint would be considered on the basis of the Code of Advertising Practice. Yeah, so that's about it for us, I'm afraid.
Okay. Thanks again, Jenny, and all of you for, let's say, enlightening the situation about high fat and sugar and salt. The discussion so far leads me to the very natural but probably quite a boring question. How did COVID-19 pandemic change the approach of, let's say, food producers on their advertising practices? And Jacek, you have something to say, or you have the answers?
At least some of them. Thank you, Dusan. Definitely what we see, probably it's happening everywhere as well. We see more and more efforts directed towards the advertising in the internet for obviously reasons. People are under lockdown, they cannot visit brick and mortar stores. Internet is the main medium for contact with the clients and for advertising. One of the phenomena that we see on the Polish market is a huge increase of the use of influencers. They were with us for some time now, but during the COVID era, they just simply are probably one of the hottest topics here in Poland right now, and they are of the huge demand and used by many food producers as well. Just to name the box diets, which are very popular in Poland, you receive the meals for the whole day based on the chosen criteria, energy drinks or any other soft drinks you can imagine. Obviously, the spirit drinks and all the wines and similar categories of alcoholic beverages, they are also promoted by the influencers. So what is happening on our market, at the moment? The competition authority is looking very closely on the influencers and the practices they use when communicating with the clients. And specifically, the competition authority started 2 weeks ago a very profound and thorough market review, and is checking whether influencers are disclosing properly the commercial nature of their activity. So the result of this market review, as we expect, will be that the president of the office will issue guidelines for influencers, how and what they need to mark and to be in compliance with the consumer laws. So basically, we are expecting that in Poland we will see guidelines similar to what FTC provided in the States in 2019, as far as I remember. But this is a huge problem. All the advertising agencies are contacting their lawyers because they are approached with these very specific requests to disclose all the documents related with relations with the influencers, to disclose the practices they use. And this will be one of the biggest investigations on the market at the moment in this year and probably the next year as well. And it will have a huge impact on this super hot channel of communication with use of the influencers. The second trend, obviously, is many claims based on antiviral and even specifically anti-COVID type of communication. If related with food, this is obviously prohibited, because even if we would like to consider use of such claims just in the regulatory framework for food, this would amount to health claims, which, if not authorized, are prohibited. And such claims are, especially anti-COVID, are not authorized at the moment. However, since the phenomenon was so present on the market, our food authority issued special warning or specific warning, saying that not only if you use claims of anti-COVID properties of your food, you are not only infringing food regulatory framework and rules, but you are also entering into totally new category of products, being medicinal products. And obviously you are not meeting all the requirements for that. So this is yet another topic that has been discussed for a couple of months now, and we definitely see that advertisers are more careful with claims related with antiviral and anti-COVID properties of their products. So yeah, these are the main topics for Poland.
Thank you, Jacek. That's very similar to Slovakia. Influencers, let's say diet boxes, COVID claims related to food, that's very, very similar. What are the aspects of COVID, or what are the COVID aspects to food and beverage advertising in Portugal? Ricardo, what did you catch through recent?
Thank you, Dusan. Well, just wanted to, before going into the topic on the slide, just wanted to say that actually in Portugal, the focus on influencers and online advertising is also the main priority for the regulators. They have actually issued some guidelines for influencer marketing and for specifically the topic of disclosure of the advertising nature of the posts that they are putting online, and that's of course something that to focus on because the scrutiny is also on that type of advertising. I just wanted to give you a note on what happened during the COVID. Most high numbers in Portugal, that when that happened, the government issued some temporary legislation to ban advertising that directed people to an increased presence in physical stores. So any price reductions or specific promotions that increased could have an impact in terms of the number of people present in physical stores was prohibited. This posed a significant challenge, of course, for companies that were trying to maintain their levels of activity and were further restricted, and so that of course increased the online advertising and the online marketing and purchasing, which of course now spurs that market and the interest of also regulators in regulating the online marketing and advertising. Thank you.
Great. Ricardo, thank you. And let's say final remarks about COVID related aspects of food advertising. Turkey, Hande, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, actually, yeah, I mean, as COVID-19 changed many things, it also changed the advertising practices in Turkey. It particularly changed the sensitivity of the advertising boards. And also we've seen an increase of influencer marketing like in Poland and Portugal. Here, I would like to share two decisions. Yes, you see the first one. This is about the sensitivity of advertising board. This ad relates to a fizzy drink, which claims that the added vitamin C can provide at least 50% of the daily needs for vitamin C. So far, the ad looks fine because it is allowed that such products can contain vitamin C, and if the information is accurate, then there should be no problem. But the board approached to this ad from COVID-19 perspective and decided that the public knows that vitamin C is important to strengthen the immunity system, which is an important factor in fighting against coronavirus. So as the public is quite sensitive during the time of COVID-19, such claim may cause excessive consumption of this beverage, which fall under red category. So in fact, if this ad didn't come out during COVID-19, we might not expect such sensitivity from the advertising board, but I think it's a good example how the board just approached to the food advertising. And the other decision is about influencer marketing. The next slide. Yes, this is one of the first cases of influencer marketing about COVID-19 related products, a product called No Attack. This product launched just after the first cases of coronavirus in Turkey, and they used the endorsement of many celebrities, influencers, who claimed to use this product to be protected from coronavirus. The boards reviewed the ads and decided that these people, these influencers, these celebrities, advertise the product on their Instagram pages in such a way that the product reinforced the immune system and prevented and cured the coronavirus as well as other infections. And of course, just these claims were far beyond what is allowed as per the regulations. So the advertising board immediately intervened and stopped the advertising. The board also underlined that these ads aimed to take an unfair advantage of consumers' fear, concern, and inexperience due to COVID-19 situation. So this is the first time where not only the advertiser, the owner of the product, but each of the influencers were also imposed monetary fines, which is approximately 105,000 Turkish liras, which is around 10,000 euros for now, or a little bit less than 10,000 euros, which is an important amount of money. This is the first case, as I said, where the influencers have also been imposed to monetary sanction, but this followed by many other decisions, and it is also followed by a guideline just ruling the influencer marketing. This is all for me for Turkey. Thank you very much.
Okay, and let's say now we close the topic about COVID, which leads me to the question to all panelists, saying like, what trends do you see in terms of sanctions, or what the tendencies are? Are the sanctions going higher? Are the food producers too creative, or are they seeking for very on the edge solutions? Or to the contrary, do you see a drop down or decrease of the penalties? Jenny.
Thanks, Dusan. Yeah, I think that one thing that COVID did was I think people spent a lot more time on the internet than they might have done before. So I think, and with a lot of advertising moving onto the internet, I think people became very much more aware of how products are promoted and marketed to consumers. So in South Africa, if you have a problem with the foodstuff or with the beverage, there are different ways in which you can deal with a complaint if you have a problem with the way the product is marketed or labeled. Foodstuffs are dealt with under the Foodstuffs and Cosmetics Disinfectants Act, and the government department that's responsible for that legislation is the Department of Health. And then the Department of Agriculture also plays a role. So if you as a consumer or a competitor of a manufacturer of a foodstuff have an issue with the product, you can either file a complaint with the Department of Health or the Department of Agriculture, or if you fall under the jurisdiction of the ARB, you can then go to the Advertising Regulatory Board. With beverages, it's slightly different, because you can, if it's a beer product, then you can go to the Department of Health and file a complaint there, or you can, if it's a liquor product governed by the Agricultural Product Standards Act and the Liquor Products Act, you can then go to the Department of Agriculture and file your complaint there. And we have had instances where competitors of our clients have filed complaints with the Department of Agriculture about our clients' particular packaging for example, different types of products like alcoholic fruit beverages that might not be labeled in accordance with the requirements. If there's an issue with the fruit juice product, then you would go to the Department of Agriculture and file a complaint there. Of course, the Advertising Regulatory Board is available also to hear complaints. And on the next slide, I'll just deal briefly with a matter that I dealt with in my practice, where a consumer filed a complaint against an advert for one of South Africa's best loved beers, Castle Lager. The advert shows a scene in a very busy bar where a barman hands the young waiter a tray, and he has to take a beer to a patron in the bar. And as he moves across the room, people start standing up and they start singing the national anthem. He thinks that the anthem is being sung for him, and he's very chuffed, until the older barman points to the television in the bar, and it's a rugby game where the South Africans are playing against another team, and it's the usual part where they sing the national anthem. So a complaint was filed by a consumer on the basis that the advert was offensive. Inter alia, she said that it's disrespectful and reckless, and it's offensive to associate the national anthem with alcohol, and that the use of the national anthem in relation to an advert that promotes the consumption or sale of alcoholic products diminishes the national anthem and the struggle in South Africa that many people went through in order to bring us to democracy. There was one of the other smaller complaints in her main complaint dealt with the fact that that portion of the national anthem that was played was only the Nguni language portion and not the entire national anthem. That, I think the ARB decided, was not a big issue, but when we filed our response, we said in the first place, the sale of alcohol is not prohibited in South Africa. In fact, the South African Breweries is a sponsor of the South African rugby team, and Castle Lager is one of the products that is heavily promoted, and it was not offensive. There certainly was no intention to cause or create any offense. And the Advertising Regulatory Board dismissed the complaint and said that it was not misleading. Something that is important about this particular complaint is that the complainant then took the issue further and went to see the Department of Health about the matter as well, and tried to get the Department of Health to engage with our client about the use of the national anthem, and suggested that the national anthem is a work of heritage and that therefore we're not allowed to use it without permission. So it landed up becoming a little bit of a snowball problem, but we managed to reach to deal with it on an amicable basis, I'm very happy to say. I also had a look at the Advertising Regulatory Board's website to see how many complaints they've dealt with in the past year, and I was quite surprised to see that it was less than what I had anticipated it to be, but there were definitely more consumer complaints than competitor complaints. But that could also be due to the fact that many advertisers in South Africa are aware of the fact that if they're not members of the Advertising Regulatory Board, that the code, strictly speaking, doesn't apply to them. What we have found is that even where competitor complaints have been filed, advertisers have taken the responsible stand of saying they will abide by the decision of the board, even though they are not members of the board, because that seems to be the right thing for some people to do. So that's all from me on.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Dusan.
Yeah, you had also something to say about the tendencies about the sanctions, but as we are running out of time, I would just like to ask you for shortening or for just picking up what's the most important.
Absolutely, two issues. High fines on food retailers. We've seen in the past year, for example, $15 million US for misinformation regarding country of origin. All the food products, vegetables, and mainly vegetables, I would say, were marked as Polish products, whereas after investigation, it turned out that they were from Spain, France, etc. So the fine, which is not final yet, there is still judicial review, is $15 million US, which is pretty high for Polish standards. and the other fine that was imposed on the food supplement producer for communicating medicinal properties of a food supplement was close to $7 million, but it was recently quashed due to some procedural reasons. However, you can see that the amount of fines is pretty significant on the market, especially for Polish standards. So you better be careful with advertising.
$15 million, that's quite a lot. Thank you, Jacek. Thank you, Jenny, again for this. And now I'm coming to my last question to all of you. And as we are almost out of time, I would like you just to say a couple of sentences. What's on the horizon? What are the expectations? What changes, if any, are coming to the food advertising in your countries? I would like to start with Hande.
Well, the only thing that I can say here is that we may expect stricter rules about the use of health claims in connection with food and food supplement products, because the regulation about the use of health claims is under revision. Thank you.
Okay, Dina.
I think similar to my colleagues, so we see that there are quite a lot of attention on the social media and the influencers, because before the YouTube was used as only marketing place, only advertising place for alcohol, because the alcohol is generally banned from advertising on internet in Russia. But now this window was closed by the Russian regulator. And similarly to other jurisdictions, more attention to healthy organic claims and more restrictions on unhealthy food.
Okay, Dina, I'm just asking Ricardo now, what does he expect to happen in Portugal?
Well, in Portugal, I would say it's pretty similar to the slide that we have on for Russia, but with the difference that there's already the ban on advertising on high-fat, salt, and sugar. And also, I see also a current trend on environmental claims and some issues around the truthfulness of the environmental claims creeping up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. Jacek, what do you expect to happen in Poland?
The most eagerly anticipated are guidelines for disclosures made by the influencers. So this is what we mentioned before. Then eco-bio-organic implementation of the new EU regulation. It was postponed, but it will be effectively apply as of the beginning of 2022. New labeling requirements for wine and wine-based drinks, plus guidelines for spirit drinks. This is a big topic, and there are a lot of changes, so we need to be careful with that. Very interesting decision. We anticipate that it will be made on the Polish market due to expansion on the Polish market of the product for tobacco-free nicotine pouches. This is something that varies, the regulation of it varies from country to country in Europe. For example, in Germany, it was recently considered food and therefore banned on the market and even entered into the rapid alert system. Whereas, for example, in Sweden, it is very popular due to cultural and historical reasons, and it is allowed to be on the market and it is considered to be non-food product. And then internet food delivery platforms like Uber Eats, the authorities are debating whether they should be entered into the register of food business operators or not. So these are the hot topics for Poland.
Oh, thank you. Interesting. And Jenny, let's give us some final.
Yes, well, I think I alluded to many of these issues earlier. The Liquor Products Amendment Act was literally published a few weeks ago, and it will now include definitions of what is beer and what is a traditional African beer, because those have never been previously defined. So in other words, they will become more regulated. Even though cannabis was legalized for personal consumption by our constitutional court in, I think it was 2016 or 2018. In August this year, the Department of Agriculture said that no beer product can be flavored with cannabis. We also mentioned it earlier, the new labeling and advertising regulations for foodstuffs will try to do away with a lot of the use of promotional characters and actors and cartoon characters in relation to marketing of foodstuffs to children. There'll be stricter regulations relating to the use of the words diet and zero. And then there will also be certain regulations surrounding the religious certification of foodstuffs. And then in relation to agricultural products, there was also a recent directive that was issued by the Department of Agriculture in conjunction with our trademarks office to say that trademarks that are registered and that will be used in relation to agricultural products which may be misleading in relation to the nature of the product will also not be allowed in the future, which puts a different spin on our work as trademark lawyers when it comes to trying to register trademarks. So that's it really for South Africa in a nutshell. Thanks, Dusan.
Well, thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Hande, Dina, Jacek, and Ricardo. We have come to the end of our full webinar. Thank you, dear participants, for the patience. We ran out of the time for about 4 minutes, so we hope we did not delay you from your other obligations. As a final remark, stay tuned and let's say connect with the Gala website to get more information about us, about the Gala. And you can also find a blog section on our Gala webpage, and on the blog section, all of the members of the Gala are publishing articles, short analysis, short memos from the recent tendencies in their countries. So there's a subscribe button if you want to get the freshest information about what's happening in the advertising and marketing world, just use it. So, and that's final goodbye from myself. Let's hope we will meet soon in any other webinar, and have a nice afternoon and have a nice weekend, even if there's just a Thursday today. So bye-bye, colleagues, bye-bye, friends and participants. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.